The air was thick with the scent of gasoline and rain-soaked pavement as I pulled into the gas station, my headlights cutting through the dense fog that had rolled in over the empty highway. The old neon sign flickered weakly, casting an eerie green glow over the cracked asphalt. It was one of those forgotten places, a relic from another time, dusty, worn, but still standing against the decay of the years. I killed the engine and stepped out, the damp air chilling my skin. The station was quiet, save for the rhythmic creak of an old metal sign swaying in the wind. A single bulb above the entrance flickered sporadically, struggling to push back the darkness. "Evening, miss," a voice called out. I turned sharply. Behind the counter stood an old man, his face lined with deep wrinkles, his eyes bright and welcoming despite the gloom. He wore a faded uniform, the kind you'd expect from a station in the 1950s. Buttoned-up shirt, name tag barely legible, a grease-stained rag hanging from his pocket. He smiled, but something about it made my stomach knot. "Need a fill-up?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. "Yeah," I said, forcing a polite smile. "And maybe some directions. My GPS cut out miles back." He chuckled, a raspy sound that scraped the silence. "Damn things, never reliable out here." He gestured toward the shelves behind him. "Help yourself to a snack if you'd like. Been a slow night." I glanced around. The store was oddly pristine, stocked with old-fashioned glass soda bottles, candy bars in vintage wrappers, and rows of dusty canned goods. The register looked ancient, the kind with big metal buttons and a mechanical drawer. I grabbed a bottle of soda and set it on the counter. As he rang it up, I snapped a quick photo of him. Something about the place fascinated me, like a piece of history frozen in time. "Not many folks stop here anymore," he said, handing me my change. "You be careful out there, all right? Roads get dangerous at night." I thanked him, filled my tank, and pulled back onto the highway. The station's neon glow faded in my rearview mirror, swallowed by the fog. Hours later, I met my friend at a roadside diner. As we ate, I told her about the gas station, describing the old man, the vintage decor, the way the place felt like stepping into another era. She frowned. "That station burned down years ago." I laughed. "No, I was just there. It's run down, yeah, but definitely still standing." She shook her head. "No, you don't get it. It's gone. Nothing's left but a pile of rubble. It burned down 20 years ago. People died in that fire." The food turned to lead in my stomach. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, pulling up the photo I'd taken of the old man. The image loaded slowly. The counter, the shelves, the dim glow of the old bulb overhead. But the space where the attendant had stood was empty. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. I could still hear his voice in my head, his raspy chuckle, the way his hands trembled slightly as he handed me my change. I had spoken to someone, hadn't I? My hands felt ice cold as I stared at the empty space in the photo where the old man should have been. My breath came in short, sharp gasps, and the once familiar sounds of the diner, the clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversation, felt distant, muted, like I was suddenly underwater. "You okay?" my friend asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't understand. I talked to him. He was there. I took this picture while he was standing right in front of me." She didn't answer. She just stared at my phone screen, her lips slightly parted, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how. The air in the diner felt thick now, pressing against my skin. My friend took a deep breath, finally meeting my eyes. "Maybe you should go back," she said. "See for yourself." The thought sent a shudder through me. The last thing I wanted to do was return to that gas station in the middle of nowhere, especially now. But some small, gnawing part of me refused to let it go. I needed to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it, that the station was real, that I had really spoken to that man. Or maybe I just needed to prove that it wasn't. The drive back felt longer, like the road had stretched overnight. The further I got, the more the unease in my gut twisted into something deeper, something I couldn't explain. The fog had thickened, curling along the edges of the road like ghostly fingers. The silence in my car was deafening, and then through the mist I saw it, or at least what should have been it. But my headlights only illuminated an empty lot. The gas station was gone. Not run down, not burned out, not abandoned. Just gone. Nothing remained but a cracked concrete foundation, tangled weeds pushing through the fractures like veins beneath skin. My heart pounded against my ribs as I stepped out of the car, my breath clouding in the frigid night air. I took slow, hesitant steps forward, my shoes crunching against the gravel. The space felt wrong, like the air itself was pressing down on me, trying to force me back. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I scrolled back to the photo I had taken just hours ago. The shelves, the register, the flickering light, it was all there. I turned my phone toward the empty lot, trying to line it up with what should have been the entrance. And that's when I saw it, a figure in the reflection of my phone screen, standing right behind me. A cold breath prickled the back of my neck. My body locked up, frozen in place as the reflection in my phone screen stared back at me. It was him, the gas station attendant. But something was wrong. His face twisted, his eyes black hollow pits, his mouth warped into an unnatural grin, too wide, stretching across his face like a gash. His body was there, but it wasn't human anymore. My pulse hammered as I forced myself to turn around. Nothing. The lot was empty. The night air was still. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. I looked back at my phone screen. He was still there. Closer now, right behind me. I screamed. My phone slipped from my grasp, landing hard on the cracked pavement. I spun in frantic circles, my heart racing so fast it felt like it might burst. I was alone. There was nothing there, but I felt him, watching, waiting. My phone screen flickered as it lay on the ground, the image distorting. I reached for it with trembling fingers, my breath coming in short gasps. As soon as I touched it, the screen went black. Then, a whisper. Right in my ear. Why did you come back? The voice was wrong. A low rasp, layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. My blood turned ice cold. I ran. I don't remember getting back into my car. I don't remember slamming the door. But suddenly I was speeding down the highway, my knuckles white as I gripped the wheel. The road was a blur of darkness and fog. My heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't breathe. I didn't stop driving until I reached the diner. I nearly collapsed as I stumbled inside. The warmth of the place should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Nothing felt real anymore. My friend was still there, waiting. But when she saw my face, her expression changed from concern to horror. She pointed at me, her eyes wide. "Your neck." I reached up with shaking fingers, my skin burning. Something was there. Something carved into my flesh. I ran to the bathroom and turned toward the mirror, my breath catching in my throat as I pulled my collar down. There, etched into my skin like a brand, were two words: "Help me." I staggered back from the mirror, my stomach twisting into knots. The words on my neck, "Help me," weren't just scratches. They were deep, raw, as if something had clawed them into my skin. But I hadn't felt anything. No pain, no sensation at all until now. A slow, searing burn spread across the letters, like fire licking at my flesh. My hands trembled as I splashed cold water on my face, gasping for air. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But then I remembered the reflection in my phone, the whisper in my ear, the thing that stood behind me. I needed answers. I rushed back to my friend at the table. She had gone pale, staring at me like I was something else, something wrong. "You're scaring me," she whispered. "What the hell happened out there?" I could barely speak. My throat felt tight, my voice cracked when I finally managed. "The gas station. It's gone. But something is still there. Something saw me, and now I think it's still with me." Her face darkened. "We need to go to the police." I shook my head. And say what? That I talked to a ghost, that something is following me? I pulled out my phone, desperate to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I took a picture. He was right there. But when I opened my gallery, the photo was wrong. Not missing. Not erased. It had changed. The gas station was still there, but it looked burned. Blackened walls, shattered glass, charred debris covering the floor. The light above the counter didn't flicker anymore. It was melted, twisted. And the shelves, the register, the candy bars, all of it was ash. And the attendant? He was still there. But this time, he wasn't smiling. His face was twisted in agony, his mouth open in a silent scream. His eyes, wide and empty, were locked onto the camera, onto me. Behind him, just barely visible in the shadows, were more figures, distorted, burned, watching. My stomach lurched. Then my phone buzzed in my hands. A text notification popped up. No number, no contact name, just 3 words. You saw us. My vision blurred. The walls of the diner seemed to tilt. The buzzing in my head grew louder. Then every light in the diner flickered. The radio behind the counter crackled to life, static hissing through the speakers. And through the distortion, a voice, low, rasping, crawling through the static like nails on bone, spoke a single chilling phrase. You shouldn't have left. The lights went out, and the screaming began. The diner plunged into darkness. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, chaos. Dishes shattered. Tables scraped against the floor. People screamed, their voices jagged with terror. A deafening boom rattled the windows as something unseen slammed against the walls. I was frozen in place. My breath came in short, panicked gasps, my heart slamming against my ribs. My friend grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We have to get out of here," she yelled. But I couldn't move, because in the flickering light of the failing neon signs outside, I saw them. Figures, standing just outside the diner's windows. Not people, not anymore. Their bodies were charred, their flesh cracked like burned wood. Their eyes, empty, black voids, were locked onto me. Their mouths twisted open in silent screams, lips curled back over scorched teeth. Their hands, disfigured, skeletal, pressed against the glass, leaving behind blackened smears. And in the center of them all, the gas station attendant. But he wasn't standing anymore. He was floating, his head lolled to one side, neck bent at an impossible angle. His hollow eyes burned into mine. Then, every window shattered at once. The blast of glass and wind sent people flying. My ears rang, my skin stung from the spray of broken shards. The figures moved, gliding toward me with unnatural jerks, their arms stretching toward me. A horrible whispering filled the room, overlapping voices spilling from every direction. Some pleaded, some wept, some laughed. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. You saw us. You left us. You let us burn. No, this wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Something cold brushed my arm. I screamed, jerking back. One of them was inches away, its blackened fingers reaching for me, its mouth opening wider, impossibly wide, skin splitting as it tried to speak. I grabbed my friend's wrist and ran. We crashed through the back door of the diner, stumbling into the night. The fog had thickened, swirling unnaturally around us. My car was parked just feet away, but the figures were moving fast, too fast. The gas station attendant floated toward me, his arms outstretched, his mouth moving soundlessly. But I didn't need to hear him to know what he was saying. Come back. I lunged for my car, yanking the door open, shoving my friend inside. My fingers fumbled for the keys. My hands were shaking too hard. I couldn't. A hand closed around my shoulder, cold, unyielding. I turned. His face was inches from mine now. His skin peeled away in places, revealing raw, burned muscle beneath. His breath smelled like ash and decay. And then he spoke, but his lips never moved. The words slid straight into my mind, burrowing deep, his voice layered, broken. We never left. The world spun. Everything vanished. I was standing in the gas station again, not the one I had seen before. The one from the photo. Burned, ruined, smoldering. The air was thick with smoke. The walls were blackened. The shelves were nothing but charred metal frames, melted plastic dripping from them like wax. The floor was covered in bodies, twisted, burned. And then one of them moved. A woman, her skin flaking off in scorched patches, reached for me. Her mouth opened, her voice raspy and raw. "Why didn't you save us?" Behind me, a chorus of whispers rose. I turned slowly. Dozens of them, standing, watching, waiting, and in the very center, the attendant. His grin was gone now. His hollow eyes bore into mine. "You were there that night." The words hit me like a blow to the chest. No, I wasn't. I had never. Flashes. Memories that weren't mine. A car pulling away from the gas station. Flames licking at the roof. Screams. People pounding on the windows. Desperate. Burning. A name tag on my uniform. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be working that night. But I had left early. I had left them to burn. I fell to my knees. My head pounded. My vision blurred. The figures closed in. "Come back. Come back. Come back." The flames roared. I hit the ground hard, my palms scraping against the scorched pavement. My lungs burned, but not from exertion, from smoke. Real, thick smoke filled the air, curling around me like living tendrils. The fire was real. The heat seared against my skin, the distant crackle of flames growing louder. I could hear them now, screaming, crying, pounding against the walls of the gas station as it burned around them. The dead surrounded me, watching, waiting. The gas station attendant stood over me, his charred face unreadable. "You were there that night," he said again, his hollow voice filling my skull. "You left us." I shook my head violently. "No, I wasn't. I swear to God, I—" Then it hit me. I had been there. Not that night, but once. A long time ago. I had stopped at that gas station as a kid. I remembered sitting in the passenger seat while my dad talked to the attendant. I remembered the smell of gasoline, the old radio playing a scratchy tune. I remembered the way the attendant smiled at me, handing me a candy bar, ruffling my hair. And then, my father's voice. "We should go. Storm's coming in." We had driven off, leaving the small station behind. I never thought about it again, until now. A horrible realization dawned on me. "I didn't leave you." My voice cracked, desperate. "My father did." The attendant tilted his head. The shadows around him flickered. The others, the burned, the lost, they stilled. "He worked there, didn't he?" I whispered. "My father. He left his shift early that night, didn't he? He was supposed to be there when the fire started." Memories clicked into place like pieces of a nightmare puzzle. My father had never spoken about that station. He never drove past that road again. I had forgotten it, but he never did. He had left them behind, and now they thought I was him. The attendant's blackened eyes bore into me, searching, judging. But then, something changed. The whispering stopped. The air shifted. The fire flickered. The dead stepped back. The gas station attendant exhaled, his face, once twisted with rage, softening. "You're not him." The truth settled over them like ash. And then, one by one, they started to fade. The figures, the charred, the broken, let go of their torment. Their hollow eyes no longer bore into me with blame, but with something else. Relief. Their bodies shimmered like smoke caught in the wind. The weight of their suffering lifted, unraveling into the night. The gas station attendant gave me one last look, his face no longer twisted in pain, but peaceful. "Thank you," he whispered. And then he was gone. The fire vanished. The air cleared. The weight pressing down on my chest lifted. I was back, Lying on the cold pavement outside the diner, my friend shaking me, her voice frantic. "Are you okay? Talk to me." I sat up, my head spinning. The diner was intact. No shattered glass, no screaming patrons. The night was still and quiet, the fog gone. But as I looked down at my phone, still clutched in my trembling hands, I saw one last message on the screen. From no number, just 2 words. "We're free." Tears blurred my vision. For the first time that night, I wasn't afraid. I was at peace, and so were they.